Hi, I'm Wendy Vecchi, and I wanted to tell you about my new Wendy Vecchi Make Art Blendable inks. Okay, I wanted to tell you about my archival inks and the new Wendy Vecchi Make Art Blendable dye inks. And I wanted you to know the differences between these two. So let's start with the original archival inks. If you look at the label, there's tons of information on here, and it says they're acid-free, they are permanent, and waterproof. And waterproof is really the key word for these inks. So these, once they're dry, they are waterproof. So if you want to stamp on fabric, this is the ink that you'll use. And I'll explain why these two work together. So this is a dye ink that is oil-based, and like I said, waterproof. So that's the key for the archival inks. Now we go to the new Wendy Vecchi Make Art Blendable dye inks, and these are a water-based dye ink, so these are not permanent. We have 12 colors, and they coordinate with my archival inks. So we have 24 colors in the archival and 12 in the Make Art inks. So these are really nice to use together because this is a permanent ink. So once I stamp or stencil with this, I can use blending right over the top of it, and it's not going to interfere with my archival inks at all. That's really the benefit of them. So if you think about this, they're color coordinated, and I love that fact. I love that I could do a nice, beautiful blended background, and I could stamp with my archival ink. That's one option. Or I could make an archival background, and I could stamp or stencil with my Wendy Vecchi Make Art Blendable dye inks right over the top of that. So these two never interact, and that's why they're really nice to use together. One of the key tools that I like with these is the new detail blending tool, and this little guy is awesome with the new inks. So I'm going to show you how to do that. Alright, so let me show you now how the archivals and the Wendy Vecchi Make Art Blendable dye inks work together. So what I have here is my perfect white cardstock. I've die cut this to make it a little decal edged card. My image from the Stamper Anonymous set is this image, and it's been stamped in jet black archival. So as a reminder, the archivals are permanent waterproof inks. So nothing is going to hurt this once it's dry. So I'll take my coordinating stencil and lay it right over the top, and I'll show you how easy it is to ink the bucket. So you can see that the stencil protects the background. You can see there's archival ink here, and I'm going to start with my watering can Wendy Vecchi Make Art Blendable ink, and I'm just going to start adding ink. Okay, so I'm going to get a light layer down. Start light, you can always get darker. Once that ink is on there, it's on there, so always start light. Very easy to blend, and you can see how nice the blending is, nice and smooth, and I kind of swipe in from the outside of the stencil. Keep in mind that these are translucent inks, so the more ink you add, the darker your image will get. Okay, I like that. So now I have the option. I can continue with the watering can archival ink in my blending tool, and I can add my shading in these areas, or I can switch to another color. So I'll switch to the Acorn Wendy Vecchi Make Art Blendable ink. Tap that on here, and I'll start swiping from the outside corners here and start blending. So you can see the beautiful blend you get between the watering can and the archival with no effort at all. So let me just keep continuing to add my art acorn until I'm happy with it. A lot of times I'll take the stencil off and look at it, and you can see how nice that blending is. I like to leave a little highlight in the center that makes the bucket rounded. So I'm going to add some more shading down here, and I'll show you how to do the handle, because that's really convenient with the detail blending tool. So let's say if I want to have a fern green handle, and I'm going to use my fern green Make Art ink. And all I have to do is choose the handle part of the stencil, and you'll see that that will protect the area that we already have inked. And now my stencil is open. So here's the benefit of the detail blending tool. If I took the larger blending tool, I would have to be very careful in these areas not to get any ink. So the benefit of these little guys, I can just swipe in this area. There's no masking needed. These things are absolutely must-have tools. I can't do anything without them anymore. So you can see I can add my color darker in the corner because it's a translucent ink, and I can just lightly swipe through the center here and keep this area lighter. I can take it off and look at it. Do I like it? Nah, maybe a little bit more. So you can see the more I add, the darker it gets. So keep in mind, these will react with water. These don't. The archival stamping is permanent.